go. But yeah, so all of you must be wondering, Vandy, you mentioned it. Our special guest is Andrew Coe as we bring him on right now. Andrew, man, first season of MLR, people already know you're the one of the newest signings for, I guess now what, Rugby New York. I know there was that official post by them, but Coe, glad to have you a part of the show, man, and
Yeah,
excited to talk to a little bit of fancy rugby with you.
I'm excited. Good for you guys for getting this thing going. I think the element of fantasy into rugby is something that the masses will enjoy. That's what I enjoy about football. So it's good to bring that aspect into rugby.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mention that because I feel like that's the big thing here, right? I feel like, and that will be one of my first questions to you, but I think everyone has dived into fantasy football, even fantasy basketball, even fantasy baseball, but no one has really talked about, these smaller niche sports, whether it be rugby or not. But it feels like there's the need for it, or people want it, and with this new North American league that people are, I guess, just getting into, it should be a lot of fun, eh?
Yeah, I mean, football is so easy. That's how I started watching. Was I joined a fantasy football league and never watched a football game before that. Fell in love with it, and now I'm sitting on my couch every Sunday watching all the games, watching Red Zone, making sure I'm up to date with all my players. Football is such an easy way to go about it because it's week by week, and rugby is the same. It's week by week. You're not checking your team every day. I know we're in a basketball league together, and I struggle with that, checking my team every single day. But rugby's the same, where it's week by week. You can set it on a Thursday and you're good for the weekend, and you don't have to check it until next Thursday.
And I will say that it is perfect on MLR's part to time it so that fantasy football or football, the football season just ends and then the MLR season just picks up as the Super Bowl kind
I
of
don't think
happens
that's
pick
a
up.
coincidence.
Oh
Something
No,
no,
about
it's
no,
that
not a
doesn't feel like
coincidence at all.
Yeah.
All the losers, the fantasy losers, trying to get their money
Yeah.
back.
well, hey, hopefully, well, I guess there'll be 7 of them. Well, maybe one of these guys, they might be fantasy losers heading into this season. Maybe there will be a guy in our league that's going to take this chip home. But hey, there'll be a few more, I guess, fantasy losers throughout this MLR season, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, that's our goal here, Co. We're just trying to grow a rugby or fantasy rugby community. And just get people watching the sport, and I think fantasy will do that. I mean, Vandy, you can speak on it, man. You weren't really that into fantasy football or even football in general, and then as soon as kind of our housemates brought up fantasy football and you started watching it, look at you, you're wearing your KC jersey, you're a diehard fan, and that started with fantasy football. Maybe we could do that with a few people with fantasy rugby. Maybe you could probably say a few
Well,
thing on that.
I feel like Cole hit the nail on the head with that one. Like I did fantasy hockey for, probably 2 or 3 2 or 3 years probably before I ever tried. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, if in college those first couple of years, really nothing going on. So hockey, easy money. But I mean, as life kind of gets in the way, once setting the lineup one time, you got a game Sunday, it's Sunday. You didn't forget about the game on Tuesday night or Wednesday. Like yesterday in hockey, the Avalanche played at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You think I set my lineup? Not a chance.
Man, exactly. That's the one thing that I think people who are playing football are going to resonate the most with, or fantasy
Yeah,
football are going to
for
resonate
sure.
the most
Yeah.
with. It's like you have one day to look forward to the entire week, and it's
Yeah.
all the waiver pickups, all of the
Well,
all of
it's
the
the
news
suspense
breaking
too.
is all for the 1 week. Is all
Yeah,
for
it's
the
that
1 day a
build
week.
up, right? Yeah, for
Oh
sure.
yeah, yeah.
And it
It's
helps
I
set
mean,
matchups and everything. It gives you time to
yep.
think about it. I'm playing this guy. You can fade all that in. Okay, I'm going up against this. These guys are great on defense.
I mean, through 1 week of fantasy football, you're basically like the odds of your matchup is changing back and forth depending on what news has come out between
No, it's true.
Tuesday,
Yeah,
Tuesday and Thursday,
sure.
and it's crazy. It has you on the edge of your seat or sitting back, like, all right, I'm relaxed. I'm relaxed this week. I'm going to take the dub.
Yeah.
So yeah, Coach. So that's the ultimate goal. We're trying to
Yeah.
create a community here to get people into the MLR. So for all of you that are maybe tuning into this show for the first time, this is the official podcast for MLR's first fantasy rugby league. It's a test league that I've created and brought these two guys on, and we have 6 others that will be joining in throughout the season to try to see how this kind of works, fine tune the details. So hopefully it builds some traction and becomes a thing, a permanent thing in the MLR. So make sure to follow our journey to do that at the Fantasy Ruckers, wherever on social media. We release brand new episodes that will include interviews like this with Andrew Coe throughout throughout the season, released every Wednesday. So make sure to follow us there. But let's dive into now, Ko. There's a lot of pressing questions. We asked the people out on social media. Oh yeah, we got some questions
Here
out
we
there
go.
for you. So we're gonna get to those, but we have a few questions on our end. And before we dive into kind of the fantasy rugby side, I mean, it's your first season heading into the MLR, so we gotta, I think, dive into that first. Man, what are your thoughts? I'm picturing. I don't know if you can see it here, but I think you can see one of our OG jerseys here that we had at good old Bill Crothers, a sevens tournament. I'm gonna show it up. I'm gonna pull it up for people at home to check out, and you'll probably get a kick out of this.
Oh, look at those!
Let me just pull this up here
For
the people on YouTube to check out.
Beautiful.
Let's pull this up here. Look at those. Look at the jerseys.
Whoa.
That was us, myself, Andrew Ko. We were heading out to New York in some classic sevens jerseys.
There's a funny story about those jerseys. Is we went down to New York and played in that tournament.
Yep.
And then 4 or 5 years later, Safe, who was on the team there, he went and played in that same tournament 5 years down the road, and they were selling one of our jerseys in their kit sale.
Really?
Area.
No doubt.
So
no way.
I don't know who it was on the team that left their jersey behind, but somebody did, and somebody.
We gotta find
out.
That
I think somebody sold their jersey.
Yeah,
they made some money.
Like,
they reaped
that
the
could be it
profits
too.
on that jersey.
It's a damn nice jersey. And for you at home that are listening and on the YouTube video, so just for some backstory. So Ko, myself, and Matt here, we all went to Bill Crothers Secondary School in Markham, Ontario, 30 minutes north of Toronto. And it was a sports school, to kind of put it simply. And we had some teachers there that really wanted to establish a rugby program. And this rugby program had a lot of perks, one of those being some tours and trips. And we took a sevens tournament actually to New York and got these funky jerseys created. They're basically what would you say, like a marching band suit, Ko? They're kind of...
Yeah, I think the idea was, or a different time we had the Mounties, then we went with this marching band tuxedo thingy.
Yeah,
but it was cool.
Yeah, it looked cool at the tournament. We did pretty all right. And for on YouTube, if you want to check it out, there's the team photo there. That was a throwback, man. That's got to be at least 5-7 years ago, 8 years ago.
You look bigger then than you do now.
But
that jersey would be loose on me.
To my point, though, it started from there. And now, through a bunch of different winds and turns through your rugby career, you've ended up now in New York, heading into your first MLR season, your first professional season in your rugby career. How does it feel? What are your thoughts going? I mean, kickoff is just like a few weeks away. So what's going through your mind right now, Ko?
I mean, we have a week 1 bye, which I'm not too happy about, but no, it's fun. I've been following the league since it started, really, in the first couple seasons, and then I really started getting into it once Toronto got a team, I believe, in the 3rd season, because I know a ton of players on that team, and I always want to support the hometown of Toronto and support all the guys that I grew up playing with. And then last year, with the addition of the Rugby Network, it really made all the games really accessible, especially for people in Canada. So I would watch most of the games. If not, I'd watch all the highlights, and I really bought into it, just like a NFL weekend. When Sundays were happening, I was watching rugby on the Rugby Network. So no, it's fun, and I don't really know how to take it. Obviously, from what I'm hearing, it's a bit of a slog. It's 16 weeks straight on, compared to where I'm from. I used to play sevens, full-time environment, but it was 2 weeks on, 4, 5, 6 weeks off, and then 2 weeks on again. So it's kind of a war of attrition with the 15s, like who can battle it through and put in good performances week after week.
Hey, speaking of you talking about mentioning Toronto there, and being from Toronto, what pulled you to Rugby United in New York? What about it? What about the team was made you want to play for them?
I mean, I wanted to make sure that I covered all my bases. I didn't want to, I obviously wanted to play for Toronto, but I didn't want to, look nowhere else. So when I went into free agency and I started talking to a bunch of teams, I did my due diligence, and New York just seemed like the best fit for me. It just seemed like what they have going on here is perfect for my skill set and for my overall mindset and well-being and lifestyle. So I'm enjoying what they have here, and the first couple of weeks here have been amazing as well.
And before Vandy hops in here with his question, I guess that leads when it's the decision to go to Rugby, I guess New York now. We got to get your opinion on the big change from Rugby United New York to Rugby New York. Is it the right change? Do you like the new name? I don't know. I was kind of vibing the Rooney, but I guess now what is it? RNY now, Rugby New York. What are your thoughts there?
It's my third weekend here, so I don't know. I can't say too much about it.
Your poll is minimal.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not the one making those types of decisions yet. Give me a couple more weeks and we'll see.
There you go.
No, it's fine. I mean, to me, it's whatever. But what needs to happen now is we do need to have a name and we need to have a logo, because that's what American sports teams do. So you can't just stick with Rugby New York. You have to pick some sort of logo so that people can get behind it and all the costumes can come out and like everything comes out with it. So I mean, the change is what it is. It's a matter of, okay, where do we go to now? The Washington football team, February 2nd, everyone's really excited to find out what their name is. So I'm sure everyone's really excited to find out what Rugby New York is as well.
Vandy, you go up with your next question. I just want to say though, what a political, what a good like now that you're a pro player now, I feel like that very sophisticated, very well thought answer. So we give a little kudos to you, Co, for that's test number 1. Rugby New York says thank you. That was good.
There you go.
But Vandy, what do you got here?
So I gotta ask. I guess when you were saying 2 weeks on, a couple weeks off, like did you ever have any kind of pregame rituals? You got the must-have foods, the must-do things. You wear your favorite pair of socks, don't wash your underwear, anything like that, or?
Yeah, so I wear these bright lime green spandex for all the games that I've played in. Doesn't really match up when I'm playing for Canada because the red and the lime green clash, but I've played them ever since I was playing at UBC. I wore these lime green spandex, and World Rugby actually is getting on my case, and they've warned me a couple of times that I might be fined.
Really?
I
don't know that.
Yeah. No, they don't see it because apparently it messes with the TV broadcast, the clash of colors.
Oh.
Sounds like a lame excuse.
But I mean, yeah, I called their bluff. I kept wearing them and no one ever said anything. I never got fined for it. So.
There you go.
I think now you gotta just slowly every game just show them a little bit more at the bottom of your shorts. Just
a little bit more
game,
leg
just one by
game.
one. See when they catch on.
Hike up the shorts after your try.
Yeah.
That's
moon the crowd. I'll put a Antonio Brown and pull my pants down.
All right, now we're expecting it. All right, so here you heard it here first, guys. So second weekend, first Rugby New York game, or we're hoping you score in that first match. But hey, whatever match you do score, we're getting the Antonio Brown pull down the pants. We get to see the gold yellow spandex and a few fines from World Rugby.
I'll tell you what, whoever drafts me in this fantasy league can choose my try celebrations. How about that?
Okay.
Oh damn, dude, that's it, man. Some people might pick you first overall just to see that. Damn, that'll be sick. All right, you'll be worried now if any of these two guys, Vandy or Matt,
within reason, I should say.
Reason.
Yeah, the highlights coming out there. Andrew Koch cut for doing something wild that Vandy told him to do on the show.
I want you to be like Derek Lewis. Take your pants off, and when she asks you why you did that, you go, "My balls are hot."
Oh
Okay.
my gosh. All right, so let's move on here. What's really interesting me, Co, especially with like the growth of the MLR, and I'm sure a lot of people are interested with this too. I think a lot of people, especially in other pro sports, especially the big four, are fascinated in kind of that free agent process when it comes to kind of selecting the team and moving. And I mean, look at it on NFL or MLB or NBA. I mean, when it's off season, there's not even games going on. The top news is free agent news. Where's this guy going? Where's that guy going? So it's interesting to see, you know, kind of how that process works in those leagues as opposed to how it kind of works in the MLR. So can you kind of, I know you quickly mentioned it about how you did your due diligence through going through each teams, but can you just speak on once you finally made the decision to move on from your international sevens career and move on to pro rugby, what was kind of that process in, you know, talking with the teams, making that decision, and then ultimately landing in New York?
Yeah, I did things a bit differently. Most guys have agents, then the agents address the teams. But coming from playing sevens, I never had an agent, so I pretty much just cold emailed a bunch of teams.
Okay.
And
Wow, no doubt.
yeah, and going through that process, it took me till the end of the process after I already signed the contracts to realize I should really get an agent to deal with this, because it was so stressful, just, you know, making sure that you're getting, you know, you get sent a contract, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't know what's in it, but yeah, it's for most guys, they go through the agent route. And rugby is a bit different, especially going into the season and the off season is, you know, you play 6 months, and in NFL you play 6 months and then you're done for the next 6 months and you don't play at all. With rugby, you play 6 months, but then you can go play somewhere else. And a lot of guys go play somewhere else. A lot of guys go play internationally. So there's always opportunities for guys to get looks, guys to get contracts. You know, if you're in the middle of a contract and you play really well in the off season, then maybe that can boost your value. Who knows? So rugby is a bit differently that way. But to answer your question, it's pretty, I don't know, pretty similar. You know, going through now that it's professional, going through the full agency and that kind of stuff.
Now, without going into details, because you don't have to go into details or anything, but was there any like unique kind of, as you're going through negotiations with teams, was there any like unique things within the contract that they kind of like added or anything? Your
spandex green.
Yeah, like to kind of to kind of entice you. Like, was there? I'm assuming the location of New York had a little bit to do with it. You know, being, you know, moving to somewhere new. Obviously, you've been you're from Canada. You grew up in Toronto, had experience out in Vancouver, traveled the world with sevens, and you know, maybe a brand new place with New York. But was there anything, and I guess on top of that, that kind of got your gears turning for a certain team?
Not really. I mean, I signed with New York, and then probably 2 or 3 weeks after I signed for New York, I went, damn, it's cold in New York. Why didn't I go to San Diego or somewhere else? But no, the only thing is, and I've heard horror stories of guys going through this process. If you sign a year-long deal, or if you sign a year-long contract, the team actually has your rights for the year after that as well, until week 10 or so. And there's a certain, I don't know how it works with the trade window. There's a trade window. But a couple of guys who were trying to find new contracts, I have friends who were trying to find new contracts, and they theoretically didn't have a contract with their team, but the team still held on to their rights. So they couldn't go anywhere else, and no other team could sign them because the team had your rights. So you were kind of in like a little bit of a bind. But I think that comes with growing pains with the league. I'm sure, you know, players hate it because they have no power in that. So I'm sure that will change as the league grows and goes through all these sort of growing pains.
Yeah, and you know what? Don't be too worried about representing yourself, because you know who else represented himself? Lamar Jackson. So you're basically Lamar Jackson of the MLR.
There
I'll
you
There we
take
go.
that.
Big
I'll
baller.
take
That's
that.
all we got.
There it is.
Dude, I'm just picturing Co walking into the room, just being like, "All right, what you lay it all out here?
Here we
I'm the
go.
international sevens guy. Got the wheels. I'm friggin' sick. Look at me in
Yeah.
Dubai
Yeah.
scoring tries. All
They
right,
hand
wheel it
you
out.
the contract. You hand him your own contract. You're like, no.
I wrote this myself.
Yeah. Oh no, we're doing mine. I like this
Yeah.
paper more.
It just has
Hey,
a
that's
number on it, and that's it.
That's
It's
what
on a
Sauter
napkin.
teaches you,
It's just
man.
got a year and a number. There you
Yeah.
go.
That is what Sauter teaches you, eh? That's what Matt said. Sauter,
Yeah,
Sauter
exactly.
teaches you all those business skills.
They just teach you how to walk into the room, nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah, leave it.
I
Leave it to the
will
UB.
recommend to all kids who want to go into rugby, get an agent, because the headache that I had for the month that I was talking to teams was a lot. So
All right,
get
so
yourself an
Now,
agent.
Vandy,
you
we're
say-
getting you an agent. You're gonna start training. San Diego Legion, start looking out. We already had one of our league members say your beard matches the San Diego Legion jerseys. So we're going out and we're gonna go get you training. The next
too busy.
all-star hooker in the MLR,
I'm way
Devin
There we
Vandy
go.
Vanderpool.
Nah, I'm way too busy working on my dad bod, all right?
Yeah,
My
all
sports
right.
days are long gone. Maybe some beer league here and there, but
Yeah,
not a
no
chance.
kidding. No
Hey,
kidding.
Hey,
so
Co,
you-
I got.
Sorry, Matt. When
go
you
ahead,
said
Vandy.
they have your rights for the next 10 months or 10 games.
10,
that following year.
10 weeks. I'm not too sure on the specifics, but so let's say hypothetically you sign a year contract.
Yep.
You go through play your year.
Yep.
And then you try to go to another team. You can't just go to another team. You're not unrestricted.
Oh,
so
I guess
you-
my question was, you're still working on the same, like whatever you're paid per match, that just continues on until the next contract negotiation. It's just so you can't skip teams in the off season.
yeah, I honestly, I'm not too sure on how that looks, because theoretically you don't have a contract.
Yeah, that's
so
why I'm assuming.
I don't know. Yeah, the payment.
That's
I don't
weird.
know how
That's
that works.
interesting.
Yeah,
Well, it looks like Vandy's going to do some digging. He's going to be the next MLRPA representative, and he's going to be
There it is.
he's going to be looking. There we go. We got a real
The
slot. So
RPA,
not
the
only
RPA.
San Diego Legion next All-Star hooker and the MLRPA representative.
Yeah.
He's
Players
going to be
Association,
doing it
baby.
all. And you got to fit in there, obviously, host and hopeful to be champion of the first Fantasy Ruckers League there too. So I guess
That's
that,
most
so
important.
who knows?
Yeah, hey, I got a busy year coming up, don't I?
You do have a busy year, man. You're gonna have to start
I went
getting
from not knowing rugby to being the damn commissioner of the MLR.
That's why you need an agent, man. That's why Coach said
There
you
you
need
go.
an agent, dude, and it would be all sorted.
You want to be my
So,
agent, man? You didn't
Oh,
know the
yeah,
first one there.
I'm in. I'm
Yeah,
in.
perfect.
There we go.
Hey,
Yeah.
Hey, Coach. So playing for Rugby New York, Rugby United New York, whatever it is.
Hey, get it right.
You have a World Cup winner on your team as a scrum half.
Oh yeah.
What's it like training and playing with Andy Ellis, and how kind of influential is he on the rest of the team? Because I mean that's a huge name
Yeah,
in
that's
rugby.
wild.
Yeah, he's a beauty. Like off field, he's so good with making sure that everyone's included, making sure team vibes are up. He's great for any sort of team building. He's awesome. And then his skills and vision on field is just kind of next level. Realistically, like if I'll be snoozing in a drill or something and he'll just pick me off with whoever's running at. He just knows the game so well that he's able to do that. But most of it is just off field, him being in those atmospheres, knowing who he is. Like everyone's looking up to this guy. So he's world class.
I feel like
And-
having that
and-
veteran presence, like that does so much for a team.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
you could put that in any sport, any team sport. You get a person who's that kind of established and with that much, like you said, their presence on and off the field, even making sure like new people feel even welcome, just sets the tone
Yeah.
in the locker room.
Yeah. And it's funny.
When
it's
when
funny
I
that you
was
yeah. No, go ahead,
when
Co.
I
Go
was
ahead.
thinking about signing with New York, the CEO who I was talking to put me in touch with Andy, and I had a 20-minute call with Andy.
Oh, that's cool.
He was on a beach in Bermuda. I was at home in
So
Markham.
okay, so then back to my thing about how they're throwing in little things. Oh, come on, the CEO's like, oh, okay, let's lure in Co here. We're gonna get Andy on the phone. Hey, Andy, you're in Bermuda right now. Okay, you know what? That's perfect. We're gonna get Co here. This is what the New York lifestyle rugby pro player, star player is gonna be like. You're gonna be in Bermuda with Andy Ellis talking and
you like
chilling.
what you see there, kid? Come to New York.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, apparently it worked. So that's hilarious. But we got to move on to the fantasy rugby questions in just a second here. But I just have one last thing for you, just to add on to that, Co, about the leadership in the room and having a player like Andy on the squad. I mean, you're seeing that a lot. I mean, you look at the success that the Giltinis had last season, and with the veteran players, international, like marquee players that they have on their teams, like you have Adam Ashley Cooper. You have Matt Guiteau. Obviously, it went a long way for that team to bring home a chip in their first season. Talk about kind of having that veteran presence. And I mean, you can maybe speak on this because you've seen it a little bit more, but you're noticing, especially in the MLR, a lot more player coaches. Some of these guys that are taking on the roles of having, I don't know if it's any different than just being, I guess, a captain or a leader. And maybe you've seen this, that you can speak onto it, but I have noticed that there are players that are taking on more of that coaching role while still having an actual effect on the field. I mean, that could be pretty huge, man. If you have a player coach, that's essentially a second set of eyes of game planning on the field.
Yeah, and it's a good transition piece for them. You know, their career's kind of wrapping up. You got to move to the US, which is a massive market. And then they can work on their skills, you know, lead by example on the field, but also off the field and work on their coaching skills as well. So it's really cool to see. They're kind of taking the approach similar to what the MLS is doing, you know, signing these big names that are on the later stages of their career to entice people to come out to all the games. And I mean, it works. You know, I remember when the Toronto Wolfpack signed Sonny Bill Williams, and I was like, I'm going to a game. Of course I'm going to a game. I have to see this guy play.
Yeah. So I guess more with that, hopefully the MLR can grow bigger and bigger. But you're right, though. I mean, they're also playing at places like the LA Coliseum. You know, I mean, there's just a lot of factors going into it that you're just trying to entice as many viewers to get eyes onto the screen. And I'm sure a player like Matt Guiteau and Adam Ashley Cooper
or John Ryberg.
John Ryberg now, yeah, man. Apparently, Vanny has just watched the final, so he's in love with John Ryberg because the guy scores 2 tries in 2 minutes in that match. But we'll get to that point.
That guy's an animal.
But let's get into now the fantasy rugby questions. So that I first brought this idea up to you, Co, and you hadn't heard really anything like it, but you were all on board with it, which made me super amped to continue on with it. And now we're finally here, episode 2. And it's out everywhere, and people are intrigued with it. We got 6 other members on top of these 2 guys in the league now, and they're all amped to be a part of it, and they're all huge rugby fans. And now to finally have a fantasy element is huge for them. I guess the first question I got to ask you before we kind of dive into like the actual stats and how we're going to do this, we mentioned at the top of the interview that you have played fantasy football. We're all in a fantasy basketball league together. You've participated in a bunch of other fantasy sports. So you've been on the fantasy player side of it, but now hearing that there's now people going to be tracking you and your stats and having reaction to how you play, and you'll be kind of that guy that now we're following. What does that sound like, and how does that feel? I mean, it's got to be because you're now on both sides of it, so it's got to be hilarious.
It is cool. It is cool.
Yeah, under pressure.
I'm
exactly.
Sure, yeah. I'm sure, hopefully, none of the guys in this league are going to throw out some hate mail like people do in the NFL. But I wouldn't put it past Matt Yee. That guy.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Hey, if I draft you and you're not producing, there's going to be some DMs, some text messages coming your way. You better watch out.
Yeah.
It's cool though.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's different. It's you can't really think about it too much.
That's a good way
it
to
is
put
what
it
is.
You can't wear it,
Yeah.
You can tell he's a pro player now because that's a typical answer that any
I was
guy
gonna say.
in like the NFL would have. He's like, oh, you don't think about it. And then, he's checking his stats. Oh, okay, I scored
Yeah.
2 tries today. Okay, that's 14. Okay, Matt has me on his team. He'd had a good day
The
today.
boys are
That's
vibing.
all right.
Let's go.
Let's go.
But that's funny. Hey, but now that you said that whoever drafts you gets to choose your first celebration, that might
reason.
entice someone. Hey, they might have
Within
that
reason.
little more leniency to not get as mad at you at the beginning if you're not producing. But hey, we're a fan of Andrew Coe on this show, so we're always pulling big things, big tries all season
Appreciate
long.
that.
So,
Let's go.
it's gonna be good. But let's get into it. Fantasy strategies. I mean, Matt, you've been talking a lot about fantasy strategies and stuff like that. Any tips that you want to ask with Coe now that we've got a player on for you ahead of as you do your research into the league and your draft strategy?
Yeah, I got a big one actually, and this is pretty big for the positions. Are you coming on to Rugby United as 10 or 15 or center?
I'm playing mostly on the wing, maybe some fullback.
Okay. So back 3. Are you?
I'll tell you, I'm not kicking for points. So
no,
that was going to be my next question. But hey, that's all right.
No, I wanted to see that. Okay.
I gave that dream up long ago. I can't kick for points anymore.
All I need from you, Coe, is you're gonna keep working at it. I want to see Coe at least lining up. I want to see you at least one kick. I've seen, man. Come on.
I'll whip out the tee at practice, and some of the guys will look at me like, what
all
are
right,
you
tell
doing?
Andy you're gonna be good, man. You'll be good. You'll trust me. I know in one of those blowouts, dude, like your guys are up by 30 points. Come on, give me a kick. I know Holland's Head did really good last year, but hey, come on, you can step up a little bit.
Let me add a little wager to the show. If you end up making a conversion this season, I'll add $50 to the pot.
Oh, the charity pot. Okay, I don't know if you've heard about this.
Or a penalty.
I don't know if you heard about this, Code, but the winner of our league is going to win a $100 donation to a charity of their choice. Vandy has already said he's going to double that, and now I guess we got Matt over here banking on you making a conversion. So we'll see that. Hey, so next time you line up, try not to be too pressured about it, that there's $50 on the line for a good cause. So just try not to get that to your head. But speaking of kicks and stuff, let's go into, or let me tell you briefly kind of the rules, because we're going to have a deeper conversation in this episode about that, but kind of just your initial thoughts, because we are hoping to have you on hopefully throughout the series of this season, and hopefully longer as this fantasy sports and fantasy rugby thing keeps on growing. We're counting tries, we're counting try assists, we're hopefully counting try distance, conversions, penalties are in there as well. What are your thoughts on there, kind of adding that points aspect? We got, I noticed that, kickers and conversion makers were really heavy, but, you had some hookers in there that were, getting mauls in and scoring tries that way as well. It just adds a dynamic, but seeing that scoring and what we're tallying here, fantasy sports coming to the MLR. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you're going to have to really pay attention to the games because different teams have different strategies. So you can take a hooker from a team that is going to do a lot of mauls, especially in the 22. Then, they're probably more likely to score tries. But if you're playing a loose and fast team that love to spin the ball and have lots of ball skills, then you're probably going to want to take a wing or, a 10
draft
fullback. Yeah, little plug, draft me. So it's, you got to really base, there could be a really good hooker just playing on a team that doesn't maul as often. So you got to base who you're picking on the team that they play on, which is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, should be interesting.
Nice. Yeah. And, you took basically what I was thinking the whole time. I wasn't trying to tell anybody because I'm trying to win the league.
Sorry,
thanks
buddy.
for spilling the beans on that one. But yeah, like Co's saying, I think hooker is going to be a big position in this. I mean, if chances are, if he's on a team that mauls a lot, he's going to be scoring from the maul. Chances are, if on a team that doesn't maul a lot, he might find himself on the wing, and kind of that's where I'm thinking is he's going to be the difference maker in this league.
Should be interesting. But yeah, we're gonna continue the conversation here on our YouTube page. So if you're listening to the podcast, the interview is going to end here. But we're gonna have the full extended interview on our YouTube channel. But before we kind of move on here on the podcast, there were some pressing people here on social media asking you some questions. So, and some of them might be actually people that you may know. So we'll open up.
I'm sure they are.
some funnier ones here. So, your good old boy, your good old boys, I should say, the Gam family. They tuned in here, and it was actually Jer Gam. That wants to know something important. So we'll start with the light one here before we get into some of the more serious fantasy rugby questions from some of our league members and other people interested in fantasy rugby. But Jer Gam wants to know, which Gam brother is the real GOAT?
That's I'm gonna go with the oldest Gam brother. I can't remember his name, but the oldest Gam brother.
Come on, you can't forget about Alex Gam.
Alex Gam, there it is. Alex
there
Gam
we
is
go.
the real GOAT.
He says none of the above. That's funny. So there we go. Jared Gam, Alex Gam.
Actually, let me change my answer. Dieter Gam, the OG Gam. He's the GOAT.
There we go. So yeah, let's Gam had to hop in there with a little funny question. But here, let's move on to some actual rugby questions here. A lot of people actually interested in your background with Rugby Canada and kind of the thoughts behind the league, and also maybe your involvement with international rugby itself. But before we go there, someone's actually interested, just as I guess rugby on a high performance level first. I'm just trying to pull up his name here that he posted on Reddit. His name is X Cotta on Reddit. He's a New England Free Jacks fan, but he's asking those trackers that we all notice that the professional rugby players wear on their backs for the data that they collect with the games. I'm not sure. I'm assuming you guys wear one for sevens for Rugby Canada and your sevens, and you had experience with that. So he's wondering actually what data that tracker tracks and how much of it is analyzed by your team. What do they use? And then what do they share with you guys to improve your guys' performance? That was X caught on Reddit wanting to know kind of the shtick behind those trackers.
Yeah, they do quite a bit actually. They'll track max speed, meters, how fast you're going at any given time. And what you really want to focus on is the high metabolic load. So that's when you are running fast for a certain speed for a certain amount of meters. That's really what you look at. You can also look at max speed as well. So the way we do it, because our ownership group is based out of New Zealand. So we have someone in New Zealand. We have a strength and conditioning coach here, but all of the
and this is for Rugby New York, or is this
for Rugby New York?
Okay.
So we send all of our data to our analyst in New Zealand, who then interprets it, tells us where we are, tells, if guys aren't working as hard, then they need to do more. If guys are working too hard, they'll have their meters pulled back. It's all put into a plan to make sure that we're not running too much, but so that we're getting the right amount of load.
Nice. I heard those things tell you if you've had a concussion or not. Every time you get hit, I heard it tells you that you get smoked.
It actually tells you a collision. I don't know how accurate they are, because sometimes I'll just be hitting it to get a couple extra collisions.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what I did to make myself feel like I made a tackle or something. Just kind of hit my shoulders a little
bit. Rub a little grass on you. Hit your back
there you go.
Times.
Roll around in the mud a few times. That's how you gotta do it.
And
the key to that is during the warm up, you got to go really hard.
Yep.
So that the meters get boosted up.
Yeah.
And Hokie from San Diego, he's actually a league member, one of our league members in our first fantasy rugby league. He actually has a few questions here for you. So his first question is, what are the 3 things that need to happen in order to get Rugby Canada back on track? I know Rugby Canada has had some struggles over the past few years in terms of their competitiveness within the international rugby landscape. So he wants your thoughts on what Rugby Canada do can to get better moving forward.
I mean, I wish I had the answer. If I had the answer, I wouldn't be on here. Hopefully, I'd be running the ship up there.
Yeah,
It's hard, but I think the big thing that Rugby Canada has always lacked is the gap between high school and university. Because a lot of players play in high school, but then there's not really feasibility in the university landscape because there's not as much scholarships, there's not as much opportunity, and that's when you kind of need to make your life decision, like, am I going to school, am I pursuing rugby, what am I doing? So bridging that gap between the age grade stuff and the senior men's stuff is very important, but sort of big picture, you need to rebuild the relationship between Rugby Canada and all of its constituents, because that relationship has been so poor for so long, and it's such a negative connotation when you hear Rugby Canada because no one really trusts them. So rebuilding that relationship will hopefully improve so that people can start giving back to Rugby Canada, start really appreciating them, trusting them to make the right decisions, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that should. We'll see whether or not, because it has. I know Matt and I have been watching Rugby Canada games, or at least we try to as much as we can. And Vandy, you'll learn quickly as if you watch any of those games. And sometimes it's heartbreaking to watch those games when you're pulling so hard for these guys, right? Because I don't know. I thought at least when we were younger, Cohen, maybe this was before your Rugby Canada days. When you're actually part of the program, but they looked so promising at one point, and then I don't know, it just seems like it hit a plateau, and then it hasn't looked as great as it has in the recent years. So it is interesting.
And I think a big issue with that is the game only turned professional in the 90s, like late 90s. And as the rest of the world kind of progressed, you have the England, New Zealand, Australia, European countries start playing professional. For the past 25 years, we haven't been professional until the MLR came up 4 or 5 years ago. So hopefully the MLR will help build, gives kids an opportunity to keep playing, gives them something to strive for. I think the MLR will help bridge a lot of those gaps so that it's not all on Rugby Canada.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, maybe an addition of another Canadian team on top of Toronto might help with that too.
I am rooting so hard for a Vancouver team. I think it needs to happen. There's facilities for it. There's players for it. There's fans for it. I don't understand why there isn't a team there.
Half the people on the Arrows are from Vancouver, Victoria, or somewhere around BC. I mean, why make them travel?
Yeah, you have a ton of people who love BC, but they don't want to move out of BC, but they're really good rugby players. So why not give them that option? And for overseas guys, Vancouver is a beautiful place to go live. So why not go?
Yeah. You won't have to deal with the Toronto snow during the season, early parts of the season too. So
you wouldn't have to deal with being on the road for the first half of the season.
Yeah,
because that's always something that gets international players.
Yeah,
love to be on the road for 6 months.
So should be interesting. And then just the last couple of questions here, Co, before we wrap up the podcast portion of this interview. Austin Inslee. Well, a little throwback. Austin Inslee, back at Bill Carruthers, one of Maddie's boys here. We got to play with him a little bit. So he's asking, who was your biggest influence in rugby growing up? That's what Inslee wants to know. I'm sure a lot of people want to know that because, I mean, you've gone so far from the days that we were playing together. I'm sure there was a lot of people that had a lot of influence.
Yeah, a ton. Obviously, my dad. He's the one who put me in rugby. He coached me all through, age grade with Markham Irish.
Good old Martin.
Good old
Go,
Martin.
Mark. Go, U16 Markham Irish. Shout out to Markham Irish. Hey, I stole one of the. I shouldn't say steal, but I got one of the jerseys.
You got one
there.
of the jerseys.
Call it what it is. Stealing.
There it is.
I got one of the jerseys there that I was able to sneak. One of the nicer jerseys that I've ever worn under Martin Co. But yeah, so
nice.
Your dad, obviously huge.
My dad,
influence.
and then obviously Kutch and DeVries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, great rugby coaches, but also great life mentors. You know, they made sure I was in line, and my dad definitely did as well, but made sure I was in line. And
just so people know, Kutch and DeVries are our rugby coaches in high school from Bill Crothers, Mr. McCutcheon, Andrew McCutcheon, and Mike DeVries. They were fantastic. A huge part on a lot of our rugby growth throughout those years, whether we stuck with it or not. But it was huge. But yeah, I could see why
they were amazing, just in terms of understanding that you have to have fun with things, and having fun is literally the name of the game. You have to enjoy what you do, but also you should be held to a certain accountability.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess we'll just wrap up with this last question here. I think this is a good way to wrap up this podcast portion. This is one of your boys, Matt. So I'll let you read this question.
This is from Isaac Kelly from UBC or
White Rock. BC guy.
Basically. He's asking team you're most nervous to play against and team you're most excited to play against.
Both in the same answer would be Toronto.
Really? Okay.
Home or away? Home or away?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter to me. Just playing Toronto, I'm very excited to play them. I get to play against a bunch of my friends, but I'm also extremely nervous because, you know, I really want to put in a good performance, especially playing in Toronto. I would say, just I want to do well, and there's that added pressure of coming home. I'm sure my parents have season tickets, but I'm sure all my aunts and my family and my cousins and high school friends will all come out and watch as well. So that's definitely nerve-wracking but very exciting at the same time.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one. Playing in front of all the friends and family. I'm sure. Also to get a little shot in at Toronto too, you know, you coming in, Co's coming in, you know, still spoil the spirits a little bit for a Toronto homecoming, which should be fun and real exciting. We'll be there watching. Hey, if we can time it right too, Co, you'll be doing that celebration of whoever drafts you on that day, maybe. So we'll see. I'll have to mark it down.
Yeah, maybe. You never know.
I want you to score a try earlier, but if we had to choose a second day, it'd be that day so that we can pin it on the Rugby Network and have that clip over and over and over again. We'll absolutely love it. But that's going to do the podcast portion of this interview. Co, stick around. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into maybe your experiences in Tokyo. Just quickly, or a few more questions.
Sure.
But if you want to listen to that part of the interview, head to our YouTube page, head to our YouTube channel at the Fantasy Ruckers. We're going to continue this interview. On the podcast portion, we're going to be moving on to the rules, format, and scoring discussion and see where we can go from there. So make sure to follow and like, and we'll have Co throughout the season as well to be on this show at the Fantasy Ruckers. So you can head to our YouTube page for the rest of the conversation. Let's talk about that, Co. Now we've gotten the fantasy rugby out there, and we won't keep you too much longer. Maybe 5 minutes here. You mentioned it here. International sevens player. You had the Canadian sevens experience. It looked like a lot of fun. It seemed like every time I checked your Instagram, you were somewhere else. And you were somewhere brand new, which was really, really cool. Let's just hop right into Tokyo, man. How was it?
Straight into it.
Yeah,
straight into
dive
it.
on into her.
I mean, it was amazing. Obviously, it's a life goal. It's something that I'll have forever. It's a memory that will live on, and a story that, you know, I'm taking to my grave with me. But it's funny looking back. I'm probably not going to remember any of the rugby part of it. I'm not going to remember what I did out there. I'm not going to remember too much of anything that has to do with rugby. It's just being with the team in this crazy cycle of the Olympics, where you're so nervous whether you're going to go or not. You have to perform well. You have to make sure that it's just being within that team atmosphere that made it so amazing. But if COVID weren't a thing, and if that is really a damper on my Olympic experience, because what I wanted to do, I wanted to go to the Olympics and stay afterwards. I wanted to tour around Japan. I wanted to go support the various other Canadian teams that were playing. I wanted to meet other athletes. I really mingle, but COVID took all that away. So it was very underwhelming looking back on that, just because we were only in Tokyo for maybe 6 days, 7 days. We showed up, we had 3 days of preparation, and then we played for 3 days, and then they kick you out. So they reduce the COVID numbers. So that kind of put a hamper on things, but overall it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I think the one thing that stuck out to me was, I think you took kind of like, I think you did like a summary video once you got back of just like the whole experience, of like a quick little video of like everything that you did. And even from that like short 50-second clip, like that looked amazing. Even if it was just, I guess, 6 days there, you made the most of it while you're there.
Yeah.
And I keep looking back too, because it's funny. We had a conversation, it must have been like 2 years ago, right? About when they first announced that you guys weren't going to be going. And we had a conversation about kind of the heartbreak and all that went behind that. And then to kind of then talk to you a year later about the experience you went through, and now you going on to play pro rugby. It's just so many things can happen onto these 2 years. But it's incredible. I don't know.
It's a year like no other, because I hate talking about COVID because everyone talks about COVID, but you didn't know what was going on. Our season got canceled in March, and then it was a month of, okay, if we don't have a season, how are we going to play? We still have to prepare for Tokyo. So you're still in the mindset that I'm still going to the Olympics. I'm still fighting for a spot to go to the Olympics. And then we heard that Canada was pulling out. So Canada was pulling out, but the Olympics were still happening. And then you're like, I'm going to be so pissed if the Olympics happen, but then Canada decided to pull out. Like, damn. And then you hear that the Olympics get postponed a year. And then it's a whole other year of like, well, you're just checking the COVID numbers and be like, what's happening? And then the Japanese people were protesting because they didn't want fans. And even the months leading up to it was, is this really happening? What is going on? Because then you see the COVID numbers starting to come up, and you're like, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening. They're going to cancel it. Yeah. But the amount of ups and downs, especially probably 2 months before we actually took off to Tokyo, was pretty crazy. And then the come down, everyone talks about the come down after the Olympics. It really, really hits home, because you work so hard to get to this one pinnacle, and then it's over in a week, and then you're like, okay, like, now what do I do?
Well, I guess you just pack up your things, move to New York, and go play some pro rugby.
Call it a day,
Call it a day. I guess that's what you do. So, no, that's awesome, and I'm sure we'll have another opportunity, Ko, if you would let us, to set up maybe like a different interview, and we can go into more depth about your conversation or your experience kind of there, and just your whole rugby journey, because I think it's one of the more fascinating ones, and I think a lot of people would be really interested, especially people if our goal here is to grow the sport. Is to kind of, it's to get people to play the sport here in North America. And I think if a lot of people kind of learn what goes behind making the professional level, a lot of people might be more interested in taking that route, because I don't think a lot of people know how to take it. Maybe they're learning about too late. They're just picking up in high school or whatever. So,
and I think if the MLR wants to grow, it needs to. And Vandy, when you're the MLR commissioner, I'll tell you this. Okay?
I'm listening.
You really need to market the players so that fans can get behind players, because that's what
Right.
the NFL does and that's what the NBA does, and it's so marketable because people go to games to watch players. But then you look at the NHL, and they don't do a very good job of marketing their players, and
Right.
that's why ticket
I was
sales have
just
not
about to say
been.
that.
Yeah, they haven't been as good. So, next steps for the MLR is to really start marketing the key marquee players to come in.
And I think,
Because even
yeah,
sorry to cut you off, Ryan.
go
Like,
ahead,
even
man.
in
No.
football, like just just watch football on the weekend, and they, even like as Kansas City, they say, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce versus, or like
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Exactly what you said. They market a player. They almost brand that player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And that
it's yeah. Go ahead.
it'll, because there's not that much money in rugby currently, but it'll add a different element so that players can get compensated, so that
Yeah.
people can still work towards making more money or being more famous, whatever it is. And people in the NFL, they're not starters, they're practice squad guys, or they're on the cusp or whatever, but they want to be Patrick Mahomes. They keep working until they are Patrick Mahomes, right? So the MLR should do that as well, where you want to be, Ditto or DTH or someone, so that you keep working so that you can be that person and get all these perks that come along with it.
And I think that's what we're trying to do with fantasy rugby here, right? And I think that's a large part why you have that type of branding in fantasy football, is because fantasy rugby, although it is ultimately, the sport itself is a team sport, fantasy sports highlights individual performances. At the end of the day, when you're talking about just rugby as a fan and just watching rugby, whoever scores the try scores. Obviously, you have an affinity towards certain players, but at the end of the day, you just want your team to win. But when it comes to fantasy rugby, you have various players from various teams.
Yep.
You're not rooting for any certain teams.
Yeah.
You're rooting for these individual players, and I think that will just elevate having that personal player brand. And I just want to, I guess it'll be the first announcement here for us, is that we are officially a players podcast here. We are going to announce it here. So we're all about the players. And
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. We got the future player representative in Devin Vandy Vanderpool to get all these players, whatever they can get. But we're always going to root for the players, and I think that's a big way to kind of get people enticed to this sport as well, and watching the MLR. Is get fans of Matt Gateau to come watch MLR. Get fans of Andrew Coe to come on and watch the MLR. And yes, maybe it's not the same high level of rugby as the All Blacks or Super Rugby, but you can get behind guys that you know and have a connection with, and that could be through fantasy rugby, which I think would add a different element. So hey, we're all just trying to contribute to that.
That's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah. So we'll see if we can make that happen, and I think in the meantime, as we make it grow, Vandy.
And like even mentioning, certain teams might not get as much attention. Like let's say like the Jets, let's say, might not get as much attention as Dallas. But when fantasy, it brings attention to those games, because now you might have, like you said, the Jets only won 3-4 games this year. But if you have, let's say, Michael Carter, the guy was putting up, bottom end RB1 numbers, it's going to draw you to games or teams that you're not going to watch. You don't support a team anymore. You support players. So that alone brings so much kind of output to the league, because now you're watching various games. You're watching all the games. Like,
so what Vandy's saying, Co, is when he drafts you first overall in this
watching all your
draft
games
in a couple weeks,
there it is.
Watching all your games,
all
and
your games, baby.
even when you score no tries or you don't have any try assists or anything like that, he's still gonna love you. He's still gonna play you, and he's still gonna root for you the following
That's right.
week.
I appreciate that.
Held on to
there we
that
go.
bum OBJ all the way till you got traded.
So that's all the questions for me that I had set up, but I'm going to give an opportunity for these two guys. So our fantasy league just starts in like 2 weeks here, 3 weeks, and we got 6 other members. They had their chance at answering or asking questions for Co. I'm going to give these two guys one final question before they head into their draft. You guys got one question to ask Co. Any inside scoop you want to give you an upper edge on this MLR fantasy season? What do you guys got? Matt, I'll let you go first, man.
All right. Not sure if you can answer this yet, but are you for sure going to be in the 23 come week 2 if no injuries happen.
You got to talk to the coach about that one. I don't pick the 2.
Give me his number.
Are you telling me there's a winger 15 better than you though?
I'm not saying anything, right? I'm just
Playing
here
it
so I don't get
smart.
fined.
he's putting.
I'm only here so I don't get fucked.
So he's gonna go. He's just putting his head down. He's gonna practice his conversions, and hopefully we'll see him on match day. That's it. But Vandy, what do you got?
I will say.
Okay,
I think the waiver wire will be very important. As I mentioned earlier, it's a war of attrition. So
that was a great
making sure you're on the waiver wire and you're watching the games, and if one guy does really well that you didn't expect to do well, you should pick him up, because more likely than not he'll get the shot the next week as well.
Well, I was noticing too, like just watching that finals from last year, they throw up quite a bit of substitutions. Like there was like 7 or 8 guys on that list. Not all of them obviously got subbed in, but kind of that'll be an interesting point or kind of facet of the game to watch for myself, is because I don't know how many guys are just gonna be plug and play. You can just forget them, you put them in, they're gonna be there every week, they're gonna get top minutes. Like that I think will be the hardest curve for me, is figuring out I guess just how many minutes guys are playing.
Yeah. And
interesting one.
I think Matt mentioned it in your first podcast, was it depends on what position they play as well.
Yeah,
because the front row are coming on, sometimes at half they'll come on and make a change, sometimes at 50 minutes. So you have a guy who's going to play 30 minutes, and you can get as many points in 30 minutes as the other guy did in 50 minutes.
Yep.
So substitutions will play a big role.
Yeah.
All right, and I'll be nice, Vandy. I won't count that as a question. So if you got any last itching question for Co here, to give you an inside scoop here as our in-house kind of MLR newbie and new fantasy rugby guy, as man of the people representing new MLR fans, what are the people asking? What do you need to ask Co to get off your chest?
Well, I'm not gonna ask you any questions related to fantasy. Instead, I'm gonna ask you what has to be the most embarrassing moment of your rugby career. You're on your way to a try.
Oh, no.
You fall on your face in the mud. I want that story.
It was my first ever Canada 15s tour. I played 2 previous games, and because of injury, I started in the game that was played in Hamilton, Ontario, my first game in Toronto. And it's a World Cup qualifying game. So we're playing the US. This game is like very high pressure. There's a home and away. So by aggregate, whoever wins goes to the World Cup. And I get the ball, and I'm probably like 30 meters out. I make a break, go for the end zone. I'm in the end zone, and all I have to do is put the ball down. But I decided to get kind of cheeky and put it down with one hand. And I swear I got it, and I look up, and the ref goes to the TMO. I look up, and there's just the ball dropping out of my hand in the end zone. And from that, like, everyone starts booing. Everyone just like, there's probably 30,000 home fans, Canadian fans, just like yelling at me. I'm like, oh my God. And then I play on the wing, so I'm closest to the stadium and all the people, and people just are heckling me the rest of the game. I'm like, oh man, like, this sucks.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that was bad.
So I guess what you're telling people then, and great question, Vanny, because this is a huge one for the people. So you've learned your lesson, and you won't be doing that in the MLR. That won't happen in the MLR.
Next time you
for the ball, 2 hands.
Okay, 2 hands, ball placed. And then dope celebration, and then you're going
down. And then we celebrate.
There we go. But that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate you coming on. I think you gave a lot of insight.
I'm going to be following along. Legally, I'm not allowed to bet or play in any fantasy or any of that stuff with rugby, but I'm excited to see how it goes. I'm sure there will be some.
There. We need to put a disclaimer. Andrew Coe is not participating in this fantasy league.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll make sure to make that clear. But we're gonna be fun. And can we? Is it official? Can we call Andrew Coe a friend of the show?
I think you can. I think Andrew Coe, friend
Andrew
of the
Coe.
pod. Let's
Friend
go.
of the pod. Hopefully we have him throughout the season. Yeah, we're hopefully
Beautiful.
we can get you. We hopefully can catch you throughout the season, Co, and
Of
just get your
course.
thoughts, especially in your first MLR season. Just, I think to catch someone just entering it and just kind of their experiences throughout their first pro league and kind of how it grows and how you grow ultimately throughout the season is going to be a fun one to keep track on. I'm sure a lot of our listeners and viewers and people in our league, our fantasy league, are going to want to tag along to, especially that guy that ends up drafting you, whether it be Vandy, Matt, or any of the other guys in our league. So we'll be watching, man, and we hope to have you on soon again. And good luck this season, man. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck,
Thank
man.
you. Yeah.
All right,
Appreciate
thanks,
it.
Co. Appreciate it, dude.
Peace out.
Yeah, thanks for coming
No
out, man.
worries.
Appreciate it.